Yeah, because I think now people say that mental health is something that's swept under the rug. It's not talked about. But even in that time, it was presented on a big screen.
Yeah.
So it was acknowledged. You're watching Real Talk, though. Hi, I'm Jeff. My friends call me Jefé.
Who this?
All right. For this episode of Real Talk, though, we're going to be discussing One Bird Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson.
Mm-hmm.
A classic movie, and we're revisiting for a new generation, for those that haven't seen it, for those that are unfamiliar with it. It's a classic, and it's probably befitting to the times that we're in. There were so many. When I was watching it, I remembered Eminem did something similar with the Real Slim Shady, where the video took place in a mental facility. This film, it takes place in a mental facility.
Why do you think they might think that?
Don't make a bit of sense to me.
Do you think there's anything wrong with your mind, really?
Not a thing, Doc.
Jack Nicholson is about 83 years old at the time of this recording.
Right.
He's been out of the spotlight for a while, and this film is one of the classics in his filmography. Yeah, and he does a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
In the film, he plays the character R.A. McMurphy, who tries to avoid going to prison by playing the role of being insane.
Right.
So he's sent to this mental facility, and upon getting there, he kind of just starts hassling Nurse Ratchet, played by Louise Fletcher, and starts riling up the other patients just to get something going for himself. He gambles. He takes all of their cigarettes. He brings women. I mean, he does everything in there.
Which, by the way, her name, Nurse Ratchet, fits her perfectly throughout the film, how she behaves, too.
Let's talk about her for a second. Louise Fletcher, in an award-winning role.
Excuse me, miss. Do you think it might be possible to turn that music down so maybe a couple of the boys could talk?
Your hand is staining my window.
God almighty, she's got you guys coming or going. A little change never hurt, huh? A little variety.
What are your thoughts on her? Like, why is she that way?
I think because in the time of when this was filmed and how it's supposed to take place in the time of, like the 70s, roughly. 75, I think. So mental health, behavioral health, etc., wasn't taken in the least bit seriously as far as compared to how we do it today.
Yeah.
There's hotlines, there's helplines, free resources like immediately available, especially now in the pandemic.
Yes.
People lose jobs, everything that, flips the whole world upside down per se.
Yeah.
But back then, even if you showed the slightest bit of misbehavior, craziness, quote unquote, whatever that was seen out of the norm, you were sent to a ward, you were medicated with whatever they had on hand. Because now they got like all these different medications for like all kinds of ailments, illnesses, whatever too, to hopefully cure you. But either that or they give you a lobotomy.
Yeah.
Just to kind of hopefully fix you and set you straight.
Yeah.
So her role is that of taking care of a madhouse, literally. So, of course, she can't really be directly involved with anybody necessarily for the sake of saying she cares or she gives a shit. It's just, it's her job to keep them in check. It's her job to collect a check as well, too.
Yeah.
So she's going to play by her own rules, knowing that they're crazy. What are they going to really do?
Yeah.
To, like, fight back. So it's easy targets.
Yeah. She runs things with an iron fist. She has this way of manipulating the patients.
Yeah.
There's this one scene where McMurphy, Jack Nicholson, wants to watch a baseball game. I believe it's the World Series. And he's trying to convince her. And the first approach, she says that, well, let's put it to a vote. And no one had the courage I think only one person had the courage of raising their hands. Actually, it was three. Three people the first time raised their hands in favor of watching the baseball game. And the second time around, it's put to a vote again, and he gets all 9 of them in that section to agree. And she says, well, Jack Nicholson says, yes, we got it. We got majority.
Majority rules.
And she says, well, there's 18 people in the facility.
Right, not counting the immediate group.
Yeah, and that shows you like how manipulative she is and how she works to keep everything in line. Is that once you think you got something on her, she has the answer.
Ah, come on. You're not gonna say that now. You're not gonna say that now. You're gonna pull that henhouse shit now. When the vote, the chief just voted, it was 10-9. Now I want that television set turned on right now.
She was very strict and disciplined. But you mentioned something else about her character and how you had this religious analogy. You wanna
Oh yeah. There was something I read after watching the film to make more sense of it overall. Just kind of get more like I like character studies, character deep dives, and all that.
Yeah.
So I read this thing online. I forget where exactly. It might have been a thesis paper.
Yeah.
But it painted her pretty much as the devil per se / Antichrist in the way that she has an iron fist rule over everybody there.
Yeah.
No one's going to question her authority at any point because even if they do, they're going to look at them and be like, well, you're crazy, so why believe you at all?
Yeah.
She knows how to run things. She knows how to play to their disadvantages and remind them of why they're there, exploit them for the weaknesses and such. So she does have that part. There's, let's say, everybody as far as the cast, all the loonies are involved.
Yeah.
They're the unofficial disciples because they immediately follow the lead of who ends up being the quote-unquote Christ.
Yeah.
Which is McMurphy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Unofficially, he's their savior because he comes in expecting to play crazy long enough where they'll let him go eventually, or he can just stay there and stay to jail.
Yeah.
But he unofficially becomes their savior, their martyr, because he sees how they are. They're just kind of unruly kids to him.
Yeah.
Because he's not crazy at all. He's just a troublemaker.
Yeah, that's it.
And he lives for that kind of thrill of the moment.
Yeah.
So, at the sake of him, spoiler alert, at the ending he dies.
Yeah.
Well, he gets killed as a mercy kill. Because
Yeah.
he got a lobotomy to subdue him and all that.
Yeah.
After he helped out, of all people, the chief.
Yeah.
His spirit lives on through him, gave him the bravado to actually act up and break free.
Yeah.
Period. But they all took after him, his behavior, his lingo, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And benefited from it.
He gave them life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was if you look at it from that standpoint, is he comes in and he gives them new life. They're pretty much walking zombies in that facility. They there's a time where they can listen to music. There's a time where they eat. There's a time where they get their pills and they go to bed. There's really nothing else. And what's so interesting is a lot of them are there on their own free will. Like they can leave, but they don't have the courage to leave. They're so engaged into this lifestyle that they don't want to leave.
Which that part confused me a lot because I would think even back then, especially back then, if you were committed, as they call it, if you were assigned to a mental ward, it was because you had to serve a certain amount of time in there until they deemed you clear to leave.
Yeah.
But that surprised you as far as well, you can go anytime you want, but you're so crazy and you believe it yourself now, why would you?
Yeah.
Or you're too scared to anyway.
Yeah, they become afraid of the real world. It's kind of like there are people in prison that are like that. There are people that spend so much time in prison that they're afraid of being released.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you ever saw the film Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy, there was one of the characters who was so close to being released, but he was afraid of what would happen. He committed suicide before coming out. And then there are those people who, when it's time for them to come out, they get another infraction just so they can stay a bit long because they're afraid of the real world.
Right.
So I think that that's something that you see in that film with some of the characters, is that they have the freedom but they're just afraid. What's interesting about Nurse Ratchet is that there's no emotion in her face.
Nope.
There's not a smile. There's not a frown. It's just this one singular look, and it's throughout the film.
And she only livens up because McMurphy's in there.
Yeah.
And she gets to remind him, as well as everybody else, that he even has to stay in check and in line.
Yeah.
That's the only time she smirks. It kind of shows any breaks character.
Yeah. When he's in the yard with them, and he's trying to get them active, and you know, when you see that, like, even Will Sampson's character Chief, he's like this big giant figure, but he doesn't know it.
Right.
And he's standing in the yard. He can dunk the ball. He's tall enough when they're playing basketball, but he's so broken that he doesn't know how to. To the point where everyone assumes that he's deaf and dumb. But he's not. He's just so broken that it's hard for him to express himself. He had a tragic experience in his life, and he's been unable to overcome it.
Right.
And you see McMurphy in the yard just trying to get everyone riled up. And while he's doing all of that, you see Nurse Ratchet in the window just looking out. Like, when I first saw it, I thought maybe there was an attraction there. But it wasn't. It was like she was looking at him with this envy and jealousy, like, I'm going to get you in line.
Yeah. I'm going to break you too.
Yeah, I'm going to break you too. Yeah. You know.
Which is really endearing to me too when I saw, like, initially, like, he's making fun of how big and gigantic, like, of an Indian, which he literally is, Chief is.
Yeah.
But then he kind of softens up then because seeing, like, he's this gigantic, imposing figure compared to everybody else there. In general, literally, he's gigantic. But there's nothing in him.
Yeah.
He's been robbed of his soul.
Yeah.
And being there only helped, like, rob more whatever little bit he's got left inside
Yeah.
him.
Thank you. Juicy fruit.
Well, you sly son of a bitch, Chief. You hear me, too?
Yeah, you bet.
Well, I'll be goddamn, Chief. And they all think you're deaf and dumb.
Chief was everything. I mean, towards the end, you see that he's everything that McMurphy wanted to be. There was this fountain in one of the rooms, and McMurphy said, "I'm gonna break out of here. I'm gonna lift that up, and I'm gonna break it." And Billy says, "No one has been able to lift that up." It goes back to one of those old myths where there's like a sword in a rock.
Oh yeah.
And you have to be able to show how strong you are, you have to be able to take the sword out of the rock. And that's what he tries to do. It's like this great symbol in film. He tries to lift it up and break through the wall. And he's unable to.
Yeah.
But he says something that's so powerful in the film, and you can look at it that way, based off what you mentioned of him being like this Christ-like figure. He says, "At least I tried."
Yeah.
You have all these people that are here that probably have more potential than him, but they make no effort to break the wall, to get out of this facility.
Right.
You know, and he tries so many times to do so. You're watching Real Talk, though. Hi, I'm Jeff. My friends call me Jefé.
Who this?
We're discussing One Bird Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jacob Nicholson, Louise Fletcher. It's one of those classics for you millennials and new agers that are unfamiliar. It's a classic. It's a beautiful film.
Really is.
There's so much to unpack, and it's. I'm sure it's probably one of Jack Nicholson's favorite performances, or fans of his that's probably one of their favorite performances.
He's that likable dick that you get every so often, and so rare too.
Yeah.
Even though, I'm sorry to jump in, but like, even though early on they try to make it clear that you shouldn't like him because he got locked up because of statutory rape, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even that, you oversee it immediately after the rest of the film.
Yeah, because he's able to charm his way out of the situation.
Yeah.
You know, and he's pretty much on this mission, and it's very selfless on his part, because it becomes less about him and him getting the other guys to see the potential that they have. You know, when he gives up his girl to Billy towards the end of the film, I think that's what one of those selfless acts.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I if I remember correctly, he tells the girl, I love you, but he encourages her to go make Billy happy.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, that's a sacrifice, because they go and have their good time, but them leaving for Canada is halted because they get drunk and they pass out on the floor.
Which is crazy, right? You're absolutely right, because they got the whole plan, they planned out the whole night, they got their getaway, sketched out, all that.
Yeah.
But then because he realizes that will make Billy happy after talking to him about, like, I'll send you a postcard wherever I'm at and all that too, and realizes he likes, obviously, candy.
Yeah.
Like, he just halts everything, makes sure he's taken care of, he's happy. And that's the one part I forgot, or maybe didn't delve too much into. Did he get so drunk or blacked out that they just forgot to even go, or during that little goodbye party?
Chief hands him a bottle,
Mm-hmm.
they drink it, and that's it.
Oh, okay. So they just blacked out.
Yeah,
Much.
they blacked out. And,
Oh, okay.
And the next morning, everything is upside down. Danny DeVito is in the film.
Surprisingly to me, to my pleasant surprise.
Yeah, a young Danny DeVito and a young Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future.
That's him?
Yes.
Because I looked at him the whole time, the guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know that face, but from where?
Yeah.
Oh.
It took a while for me. Like, I knew when I saw Christopher Lloyd, I was like, that face looks familiar.
Yeah.
And at first, I confused him with the guy that played Ernest. But I was like, no, that's not Ernest.
Yeah.
And then later on, I was like, oh, that's Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future.
Damn.
And then I see, and I thought Danny DeVito's character, Martini, well, I confused him for another actor that I thought played in one of the films on Al Capone.
Mm.
But it was, at some point, I was like, oh, okay, yes, I remember Danny DeVito from Taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of have to go in reverse and, like, de-age the image that you have of Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
Say, oh, yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
But he plays the role of Martini, which I think is just, he's a charming character.
Yeah.
And Christopher Lloyd, what's so good about him is, you see, even from back then, he not only acts with his speech, but there's so much that he does through his facial expressions.
Yeah.
You know, like, there's so much you can learn about who he is, just the way he reacts. And you see that when the wall is finally broken.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one that there's something so great about that. When the wall is finally broken, when Chief raises up the fountain, and he breaks through the wall, and he's so excited. It's like something big happened here.
Yeah.
And that's where you kind of have to deep dive into the film. It's like, there's something more to them just being in a mental facility. There's something more that's trying to be expressed in that film, you know?
Yeah. Because, right, he's the one immediately to, like, just scream out of happiness, out of joy that somebody finally did it.
Yeah.
Or they knew who would be able to do it as far as size-wise. Chief would, but somebody probably finally put the battery in his back to do it.
Yeah. And it's also possible that they probably had that conversation of wanting to escape, and I guess once they failed, they all got back in line. Because the way he screams with excitement it's kind of like, yo, somebody finally did it. If he's that excited, it means at some point they probably thought about it, but just either didn't have the courage or failed to do so.
Which is so crazy again because, right, it is made clear at some point they can leave on their own will.
Yeah.
Literally walk out the door and that's it.
Yeah.
But they're so broken mentally they can't even fathom that thought.
Yeah.
And that's why they always say, like, you know, worry, over-worrying, being nervous for no reason kind of brings it to that, you know, point too. You can't clearly see your exit.
Yeah.
You just make this whole thing about it that it's not even there.
Yeah, it's not possible. It can't be done. That wall is their limitation. And for some reason, they're limited and they don't know how to get out of it, even though it's so possible. Like, I mean, I think Chief as well, he wasn't necessarily limited by the wall. He was there voluntarily, I think.
Something like that, yeah, I think so.
They could have easily walked out the door. and it's something that you can really break down. It's like sometimes it's just easy as opening the door, but if you can't believe that in your mind, it doesn't happen. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Touching back on the ending.
Yeah.
Where they finally subdue McMurphy after like so much, and of course, there's no way of forgiving him for trying to choke out Nurse Ratchet.
Yeah.
I think they alluded to her having her neck broken, or just like severely strained or something.
Yeah, she had a cast around her neck, but you see that he does it because Billy kills himself.
Yeah.
And that was like, there's so much in there. He sacrifices his escape so Billy could have a good time with his girl. But when Nurse Ratchet finds out, Billy's so scared that his mother's going to find out, he just ends up offing himself.
Right.
And that is what, ironically, breaks Murphy. Like, that's his breaking point. You killed Billy. I'm going to kill you.
Right.
You know, that's it. That's, I guess that would be like the climax of the film. Is that after Billy has his climax, he dies, and McMurphy says, I'm going to kill you because Billy killed himself.
Yeah.
And that's also Louise Fletcher's breaking point. It's like, oh, you tried to kill me, now I'm definitely going to kill you. And yeah.
And maybe not literally kill him, because that's, you know, murder, either way, even if it's in the mental institution, whatever.
Yeah.
But the closest thing to it is kill him mentally. Kill him spiritually, so that others can see that, okay, you want him so bad, or he's the one to look up to like that. Well, here's the prime example of what not to follow.
Yeah.
And I'll show you anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Early on, when he was electrocuted, he came in and he pretended to be broken.
Yeah, yeah.
And you saw on Chief's face he was a bit worried.
Yeah.
Because it was expressed like, we're going to get out of here. And he was scared. And then it actually does happen. He does come back broken. And you do see the scar of the lobotomy.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it's like, I can't leave you here.
Yeah, not like this.
Yeah.
And that was so sad because, to see finally he made it to be who was expected to be him, Chief, I mean.
Yeah.
Finally, with McMurphy's help and all that, just to see him, like, just taken apart like that. Like, right, he could have bring it to himself to leave him in there, too.
Yeah.
Or, it would have been much more trouble to bring him with him somehow, some way. It would have been useless anyway.
Yeah.
So he gave him, like, not the hero's way out, but just kind of like a mercy kill, I guess, best yet said.
Yeah. Yeah. Based off what we know, who's really the person in need in the film?
The most out of all of them?
Yeah.
I think McMurphy, obviously a character, would have been the best judge of that because they all had their, like, condition per se.
Yeah.
The worst, I'd say Billy probably, because the stutter went away, even if it was briefly, right after he has the climax.
Yeah.
We pointed out, and he's confronting like Nurse Ratchet.
Yeah.
But then of course she lingers over him the fact that, well, your mother
Yeah.
and all that, and it goes right back to him stuttering.
Yeah.
And realizing that you know, that's what he's scared of most.
Yeah.
Which is insane to think. Something so simple as like, I'm going to tell your mother is like just going to, you know, make him off himself like he did.
Yeah. He'd rather die than have his mother find out that he had a girl in his room in a mental facility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When Chief breaks the wall and escapes, prior to that he says, "I feel as big as a mountain," and he's speaking. For the most part, people thought he was deaf and dumb. He never spoke, but he said he's as big as a mountain, and he finally. Something happens. I guess it's that party, that little mini party that they have that brings his confidence back, that reignites what was killed in him. And it was so interesting, you know, that there are people his size that probably feel much smaller than they are.
Yeah.
Because when I saw it, I was like, so, look how big you are, motherfucker. You didn't know you was as big as a mountain? And when he says that, it's like he finally comes into his own. But it's at the sacrifice of McMurphy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? He got to become himself again while McMurphy has a lobotomy. Billy gets to have the joy of being with a woman at the sacrifice of McMurphy's escape.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And, you know, I think the person that needed the most was Chief. You know, because he could have got them out.
True.
You know, and even when you look at his name is Chief. They give him the nickname Chief. He should have been the head of the pack. He could have protected them all. He could have got them all out.
Size alone, yeah.
Yeah, but he was so broken he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to be rehabilitated again through McMurphy to be able to do so.
Yeah, so crazy.